end with me, or do I need to pass this back?
Started with you.
Started
Good
with me?
evening, everyone.
Sorry.
I'd like to welcome you here tonight to the June 12th, 2018 regularly scheduled Hampstead School Board meeting.
Kathleen Abrazizi.
Here.
Jason Cipriano.
Here.
Caitlin Parnell.
Here.
James Sweeney.
Here.
Karen Yasenka.
Here.
And Pinkerton Academy Student Liaison, Sophie Chiricello.
Here.
And also seated at the board table next to me is Assistant Superintendent Dr. Roxanne Wilson.
Thank you. Will you please stand with me and pledge the allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening you'll see before you two sets of minutes from May 22nd, the regular meeting and the non-public meeting. Would you please take a look at them, and when you're ready, I will accept a motion to accept them as presented. Unless, of course, you have additions or corrections.
Move that the board accept the meeting minutes, both public and non-public, of our meeting on May 22nd, 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, are there any public comments?
No, there are not.
Thank you. Administrative reports. Mr. Collins.
Good evening. Just wanted to say we're almost there. Just a week to go, and then we're off and about, and we've got our high school graduates here that are ready to move on to next chapter, so it's a good time of the year. If you look at my report, I just wanted to take a moment to make it a point of emphasis about what our enrollment is looking like. I can tell you our kindergarten numbers are coming quite a bit under what Hsdsb had projected. You might remember we had a conversation early on, said that that was a stab in the dark anyway. That's always been that way. But you might notice that all of our other numbers are looking a little bit right where we would expect them to be this time of the year, which means I feel we're actually going to exceed the Hsdsb enrollments for the grades 1 through 4. And the other one that's rather interesting is preschool. Preschool numbers are a little bit unusual this year, so we're working on some pieces there. The other thing I just wanted to say, the kindergarten, we did do the screening, and we're kind of ahead of that game this spring, so we met an awful lot of new little 5-year-olds that are going to be 4 and 5-year-olds be hanging around playing kindergarten this fall. Our kindergarten teachers have been screening all of them, and we're pretty much about done with what is happening there. As of right now, I'll be sending an email out to all the kindergarten families just to affirm a few pieces. Half-day kindergarten, AM, it looks like the 18 families that put it in, they're good. So they'll get a confirmation email from me in the next day or so. We're not filling up the full-day kindergarten, and PM kindergarten, we're not filling that up. There's when the smaller numbers are there. Staffing-wise, we're covered, so I don't think we need to do anything different from this level. But it's took a little bit of pressure off from me because we're in a good place. Because if we would have had that big number, we would have probably had a program change. But the screening has gone very well. I just want to say thank you to my staff for doing a really good job. We actually improved it this year and added a new tool to give us a little bit more early indicator stuff on literacy, something called the RAN-RAS. All school meetings, we've done an awful lot of things here. I just want to step right out and say thank you to David Yasenka. It was really nice to have him. And Carol May did a very nice job coordinating. She's a parent. He's a grandparent at Central School. They came in and talked with kids about empathy and learning about taking care of others. I thought about bringing the board red noses because I have a few extra tonight, but I just didn't think that was going to fit for camera moment tonight. But there is a big piece about the red nose. It began with comic relief, and it rolled right into using comedy to relax and then help people that are in need. And this helps people all over the world. So it was really nice to hear Carol May come in with this young lady that works with her through Walgreens to give a nice little uplifting speech, a little bit of comedy with her. And then David gave sort of the local presentation of what's happening to help families that are in need. That was very much appreciated. So if you'd like a red nose, you're ever at the Central School, let me know. I have a few extra of them. You can stick them on and put it on your next school board photo if you would like or something. Testing is just about done. We're looking at testing results. All I'm going to say is right now we don't have all the numbers to talk, but this principal's a very happy principal. Dr. Wilson sat at a meeting that she was very happy today. So we're looking at those scores. Okay, we're data geeks. We just love that stuff. So anyway, what that says is our kids really did show some growth, and that we saw some good results that we like. We're doing well there. There's a whole bunch of field trips. I don't really need to go through all of them. Flag Day is on Thursday of this week because it's actually Flag Day, and our first grade has a nice little thing they'll be doing first thing in the morning. We had a plan to go to Odeon Point a couple weeks ago. It was that really wretched Monday, so our first grade are actually going to do it next Monday. They had to work it around title schedules. It wasn't just getting a date. So our first graders will be playing over by the sea on Monday. And we have another all-school meeting. We're going to do something different this year. Our third graders are planning a little send-off event for our fourth graders. So all-school meeting will have a nice little piece. Move-up days next week, folks. We're there. But thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Collins? Okay, thanks a lot. Mrs. Denola, what's happening at middle school?
Good evening, everyone. First, I'd like to just present you with our yearbook that just came out this week, and I'd like to thank Mrs. Lisa Babcock. It was her first year as a yearbook advisor, and she did a wonderful job. So I'd like to present this on behalf of the students.
Thank you.
It's yours to keep.
Thank you.
As I was just sitting behind Mackenzie today, I'm remembering the first time I ever came into this room. Mackenzie, you were doing a presentation, and I was just so blown away by your passion for history, and you just demonstrated to me what I was walking into, and to see you now graduating from high school and going to Boston University is just, wow, in a blink of an eye. Congratulations to you and your family. It's just such a blessing to have you with us, and Madison, of course, absolutely. So, well, the children are all at the 8th grade dance tonight at the Atkinson Country Club. It's a parent-sponsored event, so they are all gussied up in their dresses and suits, and there was a lot of excitement, a lot of picture taking, and a rite of passage for Hampstead, which is, it was very fun, and so I just want you to know they are kicking up their heels and having a good time right now, celebrating everything that is Hampstead. I just wanted to bring your attention just quickly to a few things that the children have been doing, and I want to tell you that the Take Flight, the 7th grade field trip, that was very scary to think of, and I went on all levels with one of my students. You have to go in partners, and we had a blast, but it was scary. It really was. And we all pushed each other, a lot of social emotional training that we did beforehand, and the students showed a side of them that was just very revealing and very sweet. And going into their 8th grade year, there was some really good conversations into making them our next set of leaders as they walk in the fall. So I thank you for taking us on that trip. We appreciate it. The students in the band and chorus participated in the Great East Music Festival, which you have all done, with great success. The chorus came out with platinum, and the band came out with gold. And next, I'd like to just talk about our Washington, D.C. trip. The students and the chaperones arrived at midnight Friday night, Saturday morning. And we had not one glitch. It was very, very well received by the students. They were so respectful. There was no shenanigans. They took this privilege in a very mature way. The chaperone said that when they toured all of the Pentagon or Mount Vernon, the White House, the Capitol, all these places, that all the ushers were saying, wow, your kids are so respectful. And that's an expectation. That's who we are. And that's something that I'm very, very proud of those high standards. But Dr. Dancy was the Pied Piper, which he has many times going to these trips. So he was just going to speak a little bit to the students' trip to DC. And Philly.
Yes, we did start in Philadelphia, and Mrs. Dinola is absolutely correct. Our students were amazing. And I brought a couple of pictures just to show you how amazing they were, but they had some memorable experiences. The girls were able to meet the Senate Majority Leader, Senator McConnell, when they were visiting the World War II Museum, or monument there. He was preparing for D-Day celebrations, so they have a picture there with them. One of the highlights of the trip was visiting Arlington Cemetery and having a little memorial type service, so to speak, at the gravesite of Jonathan Grasbaugh, the son of former principal Mrs. Patty Grasbaugh. And the students walked at least a quarter of a mile to a half a mile to the gravesite. Not a word was heard as they walked through the cemetery. It was amazing to watch them. And they did their little ceremony. And it was really neat over here on the side. An army band was coming for an actual funeral service, and as soon as we finished, they started playing. It's the hymn "Crown Him with Many Crowns," and we were able to just stand there, and it finalized our service, but it was a very moving experience, and they went from there to the Tomb of the Unknowns. But our students were amazing everywhere they went. Mount Vernon, the Capitol, the White House, every place they went, people were saying how respectful they are and how well-mannered they were, and they did Hampstead very proud, and I was very proud to be a part of that.
I want to thank Dr. Dancy for going with the staff, and truly he knows so much about DC that the kids got. We didn't have to hire a walking tour guide. He was right there with them. And thank you to Mrs. Wolf for the idea of pushing this forward. So it was a great experience. The other students that stayed behind that weren't on the DC trip went to UNH and did some engineering and STEAM field trips through Mrs. Griffin and Mrs. Babcock. And our 6th graders on Friday went to the Freedom Trail in Boston. And it was beautiful weather, and that tradition continues on. Our transition pieces are tight, they're in place. Pinkerton, they're ready to receive us. I met with their whole team last week and spoke about, what to expect, and getting our kids readied, readying them to receive our students. So I like that relationship where we can talk freely, and they know what, a little bit about our children as they enter. So that transition piece is finally complete, except for on Friday, Mr. Maya will be going over to do just a final check. Our HCS, our students down at HCS, they came up last week and met us for a few hours, and they are just so darn cute. And our ambassadors at the 5th grade have been going down every day, and they go down, they do the egress road, and they meet with the groups of HCS students to talk about, what would you like to know, what can I tell you about, and they're very proud of themselves in this leadership position, and that's Mrs. Karpinski, our school counselor, who has started this club, and they've been great ambassadors, our Hawk ambassadors. We have move-up day on the last day of school. They'll be up again, so they've been here a number of times throughout the year, so we're trying to make it very familiar for them so they know me and they're seeing me and seeing the school and the lockers, and that's the biggest thing they're worried about is the lockers. And I tell the parents, please do come in the summer. It's lonely for me in the summer. So come on over, we'll show you, walk around the building, and just bring me an iced coffee, please. So the Pinkerton will be hosting our students, as I told you before, on August 7th. I have some important dates for you down here, if you need them for your calendars. We will be having, on Friday, we are having the New York Miler. We are part of the New York Marathon, and our children have been training all year to do the Miler, and the Olympics Day, and our final Hawk Assembly is on June 15th, followed by Monday, we will have our class day. At 9 a.m. Parents are being invited personally for any of their children that will be receiving outstanding awards for the 8th grade class. And then we have graduation on Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Another thing I wanted to tell you, we are reaching out to parents in a final blog at the end of the year, and I'm going to send home some paper copies and as well as electronic copies of, this is for reading lists, recommendations of books that were great summer reads and prepare them for the next year, and also with mathematics. And we know that summer slump really does have an effect on our children's progress. So I thank Mrs. Hanson and Mrs. Wallace for putting this together and as a guide for our parents. I wanted you to know that that wonderful grant that we were able to attain through the Department of Education on UDL. They had a very national presenters, thank you, national presenters that came to do some PD with our UDL team, Universally Designed for Learning, and they also addressed the faculty, because this is a 2-year commitment that we are working on, and it's very much one of the things, just to give you an idea of what UDL is. It's one of those acronyms that unfortunately education has so many, but it's looking at the way we design our lessons. So a teacher goes into the classroom and, you know, you go to the middle and you hope you're getting both ends, the students that need support, the students that need challenge. And this is a way of designing your lessons on either end and then bringing it all in. So we heard about differentiation. This is talking about really looking at your lesson planning, making sure it's designed to include all levels of learners with all different types of delivery systems. So we're very excited about that, and very happy to have this grant for the next 2 years and perhaps 4 years. So we're busy.
Thank you. I'd like to thank both you and Mr. Collins for ending the year so smoothly with all the different activities that are going on in both schools at different times. And getting back to the Washington trip, I think it's always nice for the board to hear how well our students behave on a trip, and that their comments from other people, that their behavior is so mature and they're very respectful. And I think that speaks well of our educators here and also of the parents in Hempstead.
Absolutely.
So it's very nice to hear. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
This is SAU, sorry. It's SAU.
Sophie, what's happening at Pinkerton? You're all done, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yesterday, Pinkerton's class of 2018 graduated at the SNU Arena. Among those students, over 200 of them were considered to be New Hampshire scholars and wore a medal around their necks as they graduated. New Hampshire scholars are students who complete a certain amount of credits in English, math, science, social studies, and foreign language. As for everyone else in the school, their last full day of classes is tomorrow. Following this, they have 4 days of final exams. Those days only last for about 4 hours or so. On June 4th, 22 of Pinkerton's students tested for their EMT practical exam. This exam they study for all year round. They take a whole class for it, and incredibly, 100% of the Pinkerton students this year passed the exam. For sports, after beating Bedford the week previous, Pinkerton varsity tennis lost to them in the championship. It was very close. I was there. It was very stressful. They were doing good until doubles matches came up, and then they just lost to it. However, Pinkerton's boys varsity lacrosse won their state championship this Saturday.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Good news. Congratulations to them.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Saw a lot of there are a number of Hampstead students on the lacrosse team. I saw a number of pictures
Yes,
of it.
a lot of boys, from the goalie, a lot of the forwards, the person who does the face-offs, who is #1 in the state, he's from Hampstead. A lot of Hampstead kids on the lacrosse team.
Yeah. Good, thank you. Dr. Wilson, you want to lead us into our scholarship winners, please?
Yes. What we like to do is to recognize some seniors from Pinkerton who have shown through their academic achievements and their community service some of the standards that we have here in Hampstead. There is an application process that each one of these seniors who live in Hampstead, who may want some of the scholarship awards. And the school board awards 2 scholarships, one for a girl, one for a boy. And as they fill out the application, it goes back to Pinkerton. Pinkerton has a committee. They do a lot of these types of scholarships at Pinkerton, and so this committee is the one who looks at all of the applications and makes the decision. The Hampstead board does not make the decision on who gets the awards. It's actually through Pinkerton. Mm-hmm. So we never know until probably the last week in May who actually is going to be given the award. But we know that they have chosen over the years, since 2002 is when I think we started this process. So everyone has been very talented that has come through here. And it's a nice recognition to help them on their way. And we have one of those award-winning seniors here with us tonight, and I'd like to present one of the scholarships to Mackenzie Finicaro.
Mackenzie, by way of introduction, though, I'd like to invite you to the podium.
Absolutely.
And so that you can tell us a little bit about yourself and about your plans for the future. Sure. And this is your scholarship.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good evening. As mentioned, my name is Mackenzie Finicaro, and I am a graduating senior of Pinkerton Academy. First and foremost, I would like to thank the Hampstead School Board immensely for this scholarship. It will be put to good use in college as I work to study and prepare for my career. So in the fall, I will be attending Boston University, and my plan is to major in international relations, and I'm also planning on putting heavy emphasis on foreign languages in college. I'm already fluent in Spanish, and I know a little bit of Mandarin, and I'd like to become more fluent in Mandarin and also learn Arabic as well, as my ultimate goal would be to be an interpreter for an organization such as the State Department or the FBI or CAA, and I'd like to be an interpreter for our international affairs in this country, and those are some of my ultimate ambitions, and I'm very excited to be attending college and very excited for my future. And thank you very much for having me here tonight and for this wonderful scholarship.
Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a second winner who could not be with us tonight. His name is Connor Jowett, and I believe you have a letter from him who, because he couldn't be here, wanted to share some of his thoughts and thanks as well.
So Connor writes, "Dear members of the Hampstead School Board, first thank you again for the scholarship from the board and contributing to my education over the next 4 years and beyond. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it to the meeting today because I have out-of-state relatives coming for a graduation dinner that was planned last month. Please don't let this be a reflection of my appreciation for the scholarship. If you would like me to attend the next meeting, I would be happy to do so. As for my education, next year I will be attending the University of New Hampshire, where I was admitted into their Paul School of Business. Above this, I was also accepted into the Paul Scholars Program of 38 students who went above in their coursework for AP classes and business-related classwork. This program will have more in-depth experience with teachers and possible employers in future years. I plan on majoring in finance and data analytics, which I will use after college as I look for a career in the city or going back to get my master's degree. Although I have big plans in my future, I will never forget the town that raised me and the schools and teachers in Hampstead that inspired me to push myself further. And finally, thank you again, members of the board, for getting me closer to my future success. Sincerely, Connor Jowett. Very nice. So thank you, Mackenzie, and to Connor. We wish you much luck and success next year at college. And certainly, you should be proud of yourselves for everything that you've accomplished to date.
Thank you very much.
Sophie. So, Sophie, you've been with us all year, and you've contributed so much to this board, keeping us apprised of what's been happening in Pinkerton. We can't thank you enough for representing Pinkerton here. We appreciate it very much. So we have a card for you. Oops. Card. Barnes and Noble. Thank you too. Appreciate everything that you've done.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to add to?
You made it.
Appreciate your input here. Thank you.
You did it. You made it through all of our meetings. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You survived.
Sophie, I will say that I'm appreciative, and I know the board over the course of the year has looked to you for input, particularly as we consider different things that would affect the students in the middle school. And on multiple occasions, we talked about how that would impact their transition to Pinkerton. So we've looked to you to provide us with your insight, in addition to obviously what's going on at Pinkerton. And Mackenzie in the crowd as well. I think you're both great examples of what we call the trend word in education is student voice. It's making sure our students have a voice to the administration, to the board. You guys are both great examples of that. Mackenzie, very early in my time on the school board, you were up, as Mrs. Donnell mentioned, up presenting on blizzard bags that the board adopted, and that's largely because of the work that you did to bring that to the board's attention and to to ask us to consider it. So I think it's just a great example of the interaction of students.
Thank you.
Can I just
Thank all of you.
While you're both still here, I had asked Pinkerton to give me examples of students who graduated from Hampstead who were in the top 20. And I just would like to acknowledge the 7 students that I think did remarkably well. And Sophie Chiricello is part of that top 20. Mackenzie is part of that top 20. Zachary Hudgens, Alexandra Moorhead, Adelaide Cagle, Alyssa Felder, and Ryan Mullen as well. But I think it's really a culmination of all the work that's happened preschool through grade 8, through the Hampstead School District, and then on to Pinkerton.
So they were in the top 20 of the graduating class, is what you're saying?
Yes.
7 of them.
And you both failed to mention that? Congratulations. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
That's why I thought I'd mention it.
And while we're talking about Pinkerton, there's someone else that I want to include. Another Hampstead Pinkerton student was recently recognized for her accomplishments and leadership skills. At the annual spring convention of the New Hampshire Association of Student Councils, held at the State House in Concord, Tatum Metzler was honored for being elected president of the statewide organization. More importantly, she was elected by her peers. Pinkerton has 54 members, and the New Hampshire Association has 15 school affiliates across the state. The New Hampshire Association of Student Councils was founded in 1972 and is committed to fostering communication and cooperation between high school student councils within New Hampshire. It hosts statewide and regional conferences, sponsors leadership training, and serves as a liaison between local high schools and the National Association of Student Councils. As president, one of Tatum's responsibilities will be to make sure that student voices are represented statewide and to organize and lead events that will better the communities in which we live. So on behalf of the board, I wish Tatum much success in her new position and in achieving the goals of the organization.
Congratulations.
And now, unless you want to hear about year-end financials, our guests are free to go.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Have a wonderful summer.
You too.
You too.
Congratulations.
Mr. Dowd.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. I'm going to distribute to you a budget status report as of today, as of 6/12.
So you're going to be doing year-end financials and the fund balance retention, correct?
Jeff, we need one more.
I think they're down there.
Oh, they're going this end? Now we have an extra one. Want it?
Well, good evening, and as you rightly pointed out, I will be discussing a couple things tonight, current year financials and the fund balance retention. And so before we discuss fund balance retention at all, we can take a look at where we are relative to where we thought we would be and what we would anticipate potentially for surplus. And I've listed budget and actuals and variances relating to all of our budget categories, and you'll see that our total anticipated expenditures would be about $25,255,000. Actual will be closer to $24,263,000, with a variance of about $991,000 favorable. So when we look at what we expected for expenditures, we are spending less by $991,000. When we look at where we are for revenue and credits, you can see through the various lines: prior year surplus, capital reserve for encumbrances, local, state, and federal, as well as town assessments, compared to where we were on the budget, $25,255,523. We're up a bit, $25,430,736 for favorable variance of $175,413. And those numbers are on the conservative side. However, you'll see a fund transfer line at the top where the appropriations variances are. And fund transfers typically speak to food service expenses that we budget in the general fund that are offset by revenues, federal projects that we know we're going to be incurring that are budgeted there in the general fund and are offset by revenue in the respective fund, the 220 fund. So the bottom line on fund transfers is that generally there's no variance, because if we're underspent, we've got less revenue. So typically if that number is lower, it's offset by revenue equally. So we don't have any exposure typically in that line. However, this time we do a little bit, and it's just the way that it happened to show up in the financials and the way that we budgeted. If you'll note, at the bottom of the page, you'll see reserve for encumbrances, capital reserve contribution, change in fund balance retained, which is what I'm anticipating. There'd be no change to that here, and change in fund transfers received. If you recall, we had anticipated a fund, or approved, I believe, a capital reserve fund transfer of $400,000 to cover a roofing project at the central school, for which we had budgeted $400,000. But in fact, the project came in very favorably at $218,000, which means that we would not be receiving $400,000 from capital reserve. We'd only be receiving $218,000. So that, I deducted that out. So it's a little deceiving to look at the number and say, well, we're $991,000 favorable on expenditures. Yeah, we are, but we also haven't spent the $188,000 that was left over from that project, because we're not receiving the offsetting revenue for that. So I made that adjustment at the bottom. So when I look, I would say that if I look at the total unassigned fund balance surplus as it was, we'd be looking at about $800,000 now. That's subject to change. I haven't made any year-end adjustments or entries or anything to that effect. That's just a best estimate provided for the purposes of perhaps being able to consider fund balance retention at this time. I can address any questions you have on that, but while we're talking about unassigned fund balance, what we call surplus, I'll tell you a little bit about that. And as you can see, the way that it's built up and the way that we look at it, we look at how much money we've taken in, how much revenue we've taken in, how much we've rolled forward from prior year surplus, how much of that is accumulated into all of the funds that we're able to spend in the current year, and we look at our appropriations and how much we've actually spent. And as a general proposition, the difference between the two would be your unassigned fund balance. And when we say unassigned fund balance, that means that it's money that's left, that's not assigned anywhere, that has nowhere else to go, that can be used to reduce the next year's taxes. When we talk about fund balance retention, we're talking about retaining a portion of that, of those funds from being moved forward to be available to reduce taxes. We have nothing in particular in line for that fund balance retention amount, but we don't spend it. We also have something called capital reserve. The capital reserve fund, we fund, we've been funding by warrant, by the approval of voters to the tune of about $125,000 annually. That capital reserve typically builds up, and our voters will vote to allow a disbursement out of those funds. That fund is held separately by the trustees of the trust funds for the town of Hampstead, and we mention it because we say capital reserve fund, not to be confused with surplus, not to be confused with fund balance retention. So tonight, we would be talking specifically about looking at our fund balance retention. The fund balance retention historically has been is currently $200,000 and has been in that range. The fund balance retention itself is permitted under RSA 198 4-B, and the district is allowed to retain up to 2.5% of its assessed previous year assessment for the purpose of this unassigned emergency fund, if you will. The fund can be used in a number of ways, not the least of which can it be used without the approval typically of the DOE. We would apply to them if something came up where we needed to dip into those funds. We can look at a number of situations that may arise where the district may have to utilize those funds, including revenue shortfalls, surplus to reduce tax rate, but that's typically in the following year. And there are a number of other instances that the DOE would allow us, perhaps if there's a special education need or some other need, we have a facilities or a building issue. We may not have the ability, if we have a building or facility issue, to utilize our capital reserve fund. We had a few years ago the roofs from snow load. Some of the roofs in various schools had compromised the structures, and if something like that should happen, you need cash to be able to locate your students somewhere else, regardless of what risk liability coverage you have for it. There's still a lot of out-of-pocket expenses. Regardless of what aid you might get from the state to mitigate that, you still need the funds to be able to make those adjustments completely unforeseen. And what fund balance retention in that case would be available, I would imagine, with department head approval to accommodate such an event. So I know that in speaking with various people in the business, on the business administrator side of things, on the audit side, surprisingly the answer to how much should we retain is as much as you can, because you never know what could come up. So 2.5% of the 21 million, a little over 500,000 that you'd be allowed to retain. We've been retaining about 200,000. If you retain nothing, that 200,000 will be released and go back as part of your our unassigned fund balance or our surplus.
Just so the 2.5% that we're allowed would be what, 500,000?
About 500,000, yep.
And historically, we've been doing 200,000.
200,000.
So that's an additional 300,000 that is going back to the town.
It is not.
It is not going back.
Oh, the 300,000 is going back to the town that you would be permitted under statute to retain, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you don't retain it, then it goes back to the town.
Okay.
To reduce taxes. Well, I shouldn't say it goes back to the town. It's simply not held by the district.
Yeah, so net.
It goes back into the general fund, doesn't it?
Well, but the net is, we're looking at an $800,000 surplus.
Mm-hmm.
We do a retention of 200,000, we're returning 600,000.
No, that's not correct, right?
Correct, because I did not anticipate any change. Very good. I didn't anticipate any change in that fund balance since we've been so consistent about the 200,000. If we maintained our level.
Okay.
If we maintained our current level, then we would be at about 800,000.
Oh, right, you've already taken that into
He already
account.
took it out,
So
yeah.
the 800,000 includes the 200 if we retain that 200.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion that we set the fund balance retention at $200,000.
I'll second.
Discussion. So basically, by doing that, though, we are not actually following the advice of taking out the 2.5%, the maximum that we are allowed, because we have been advised that it makes sense to do that.
That is correct. I think
And
that
we
it's
choose not to do that
out of deference for the
for
taxpayers.
the
and-
taxpayer, right?
That's right.
Okay. Wanted to be clear on that. Okay, so there's a motion on the table. Any more discussion?
I'd like to maybe discuss the impact of bumping that up to 300,000. I think we have known issues at least one school that could come up, and if we were in the situation where something failed at, say, Central School, just to be clear, we could access this if we went through DOE and they approved it.
Correct.
I think it's something to consider.
And it may not be the happening of a particular thing
Right.
at Central School. It may be the happening of several things where then something happens at Central School,
Right.
which wouldn't allow for the budget. Perhaps you have an overage in special education placements or a number of other expenses that just through the normal cycle of things and unforeseen expenditures occur, and then something happens with Central School.
I mean, I know from being on the construction committee, I know we have a septic system which is severely aging, and that would not be a small project if something were to happen if that fails. So that's kind of my thought. I don't know.
So would you like to make an amendment to the motion?
I would like to make an amendment to the motion to increase to 300,000 for the retention.
Okay. Any discussion?
What's your recommendation?
If you would like to, if you were interested in growing the fund balance retention, it probably would be good to do so at a slower clip, 300,000 or 250. I can't argue that it wouldn't be wise to have some incremental increase in it, and if it were even 250,000, that would be something.
Half of what we could do.
Could do, yeah.
250 would be actually half
Right.
of the,
Yeah.
yeah, so that makes sense.
And I think that the other thing to consider is that if we went to the Department of Education and said, well, we have a septic system that's in need of replacement, the very first thing that they're going to do is come back and say, well, we're not, this money is not here to supplement your budget. I think the problem is that our budget is done for the year, and any issues that really came up in connection with that septic there and perhaps being at end of life came up after the budget cycle really was complete. So there really wasn't an opportunity to put it to the voters if we needed to reduce some replacement or something to that effect. So in this case, I don't necessarily see it as us neglecting to budget properly. I see it that we know that there may be some issues out there that we're now aware of, and the budget has already been passed. And I think that we're doing a better job in terms of the budget, and I think that we're doing a better job spending and budgeting to our spend. So our surpluses are, as you notice, going down.
I also think, I having been here since this fund started, right, the discussion was largely about this covers us in the event of an unplanned, catastrophic sort of event, typically a facilities-related event, most likely.
Mm-hmm.
But by its very nature, it's not. We don't expect the septic system to fail, right, or the roof to fail or things like that. And typically, we have those things planned out in our long-range capital plan. And it's just a matter of prioritization. We can't get to all of our capital projects at once, and nor do we have the funds to do all of them at once. And so this is sort of the hedge, as we get down that list and we tick off Mr. Geary's list of projects that we know we need to get done. Well, what happens if something that we anticipated would last us another 2 to 3 years suddenly fails and we have this massive expense? So I'm okay with you going up a little bit, 250. I could be okay with 300, and I think it's just the important thing to point out to the chair's point is one, we're still half of where we could be at, and two, anything that we don't expend, and we haven't expended on this stuff before, but anything we don't expend, it gets put right back to the taxpayers. So.
All right, so in order to access the capital reserve funds, it has to get approved by the voters first,
Typically,
correct?
put it out to the voters.
All right, now, from what I understand is, typically what it is, if you don't budget for it, it's not going to happen, meaning that you can't spend money that you haven't budgeted for. I know that there is a way to appeal to the DOE. Is it only for the use of the fund retention balance, or is there some other?
The capital reserve fund or any of our trustee-type funds are set up according to a trust agreement or a trust relationship, no matter how informal or formal that may be, and really are outside the purview of the Department of Education in that regard. Fund balance retention isn't a separate fund, but our capital reserve fund is its own fund. It was approved by the voters, and so we're in a position to abide by the terms of our typical withdrawal structure on that fund. In particular, the Department of Education wouldn't be able to waive that for us.
Okay, and then as far as the facilities go, we have the facilities budget, we plan all of these projects, and I understand that historically what has happened is a lot of the projects that we have planned and budgeted for haven't actually come through because something else happened and we needed to use the money for that. And I know that the way that we do the schedule, the work schedule, is we kind of try to get as much in at the end of the year during the spring, because that's when, we have the finals for the bills in the winter, because we never know what those are going to be, and, what have you. So that there is some money to play with should something unforeseen come up, so to speak. And I know that we had that with the issue over at the Central School, which was caused, we believe, by the snow load on the roof with the shifting of the library and that wing where that wing meets the other wing. I'm kind of surprised to hear about the septic system. I would think that, that would be something that would be board knowledge ahead of time, and perhaps I just missed it. I have heard a lot of criticism regarding this fund balance retention among some townspeople, only because, they're always with the town budget versus the school budget, and the town portion of the taxes versus the school portion of the taxes. Typically we don't get the grants and the funding from the state that the town side does. And also, I believe that the town, they have to be retaining less, because if we have to do 2.5%, if that's our limit, is their limit also 2.5%?
I am tempted to say that limit might be a little bit different in the town sense, but their actual budget's significantly smaller.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking, so maybe that's one of the reasons why it's less, but I know that there's been some criticism because the town is more likely to need the money because of winters and that sort of thing. So I'm not really in favor of bumping it to 300. I think staying at 200 is respectable. I think that there's things that we can do, and I think the 200 would be enough of a cushion.
Okay, I would disagree with that. I, in the past, thought that the 200 was too little. I think on a $24 million budget, I don't think it's exorbitant to expect to have a $300,000 cushion, if you will, if we need it. So my feeling is that the 300 is fine, because it's still not the full amount that we're allowed by law to take. So there's an amendment on the floor for the 300.
For the purposes of procedure, by the way, I'll second the amendment, because I don't think it had a second on it.
Did not yet. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So.
So we're voting on the amendment, which is to have the retention fund sent at $300,000. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. The amendment passes.
Before we do the final vote, not to be too redundant, but, and Mr. Dow, please correct me if I'm incorrect. If we don't spend this, which we haven't,
right,
it gets returned to the taxpayers.
Correct.
Like, this isn't a case of we get to use this for pet projects or whatever things we want. Like, and maybe that's where some of the confusion from the townspeople come in. If we don't spend this, this goes right back to the taxpayers. And historically, we thankfully haven't had a catastrophic failure where it's absorbed all of the money we've set aside. But this is not a case of, this is not like a secret little account that we get to draw from. This goes right back to the taxpayers.
Correct, and I think that as a general proposition, we haven't necessarily been in a position. If we needed to use that, it would really have to be some significant happening, some significant event that would be truly unforeseen. That said, it's been very consistent, so at this point, if it's 200,000 that rolled forward, there'd be no impact. I would suggest on taxes, 300,000 has a slight impact, but it is good in a way, and if it's not used, it will be returned. And the vote that you put forward does not increase that fund balance retention by 300,000. That sets it at 300,000. So you're not incrementing the 200 we have and adding 3. It's simply setting it at 300,000.
And, I understand that this isn't a new tax or anything like that. This is just money that's set aside. This is money that has already been collected. And I understand that, it's an annual thing where year to year we have to make this decision and we have to make the dollar amount. It just, with seeing that surplus has, been projected at already, 100 and, am I reading this right? It's projected at 180 less than, oh, I don't have last year's numbers in front of me. What was last year's surplus? Do you happen to know?
Well, I believe what we would have applied would have been 772,000.
All right, so it's in the same ballpark then.
It was about this. I remember that last year we could have retained 475,000.
Oh, from what was assessed?
Correct.
Based on the assessment amount?
Yeah.
It was the assessment amount, I think, was lower at the time.
And we didn't. We did the 200.
Yep.
No more discussion? I'd like to hear a motion to set the fund balance retention at 300,000.
The motion's already active.
Huh?
The motion's already active.
Yeah,
right?
that's active. The motion was made.
Wasn't
and
it
then
just the
amended.
amendment?
Yeah, that amended the main motion to
And
300,000.
so it went back. Okay.
Yep.
So we just need to vote on it.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Didn't bring my Robert's rules with me in my purse tonight.
Listen, we're here to help each other out.
Okay. All in favor of the motion on the floor? Opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Are there any other questions that you have on the budget actuals that have been presented? Is there anything else that I can address for you this evening?
Well, yeah, can you maybe touch base on the federal funds received and why it's unfavorable? Is there any way that you can shed some light on why we didn't get the money that we were anticipating from the federal government?
The federal government's reimbursements don't always meet with our expectations, and I'm factoring in a lower amount for that in this year. And we may end up coming in okay on that, but I'm being conservative in my approach.
Okay.
I think I've said before, too, I mean, that I would prefer you be conservative when estimating some of these revenues, because we have seen in other districts where they've been overly aggressive in forecasting some revenues, and it's really hurt them when they haven't realized the forecasted revenues. And I'd rather put us in a position where we don't have to call a special meeting of the town because our budget's coming up way short because of misforecast.
Correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr.
Very well.
Thank you. Mr. Collins. Mr. Collins and I met last week. So he shared with me the plans for Central School for the start of school this year. And during that meeting, I decided that this was really some information that the board and the viewing public needed to have.
so that everyone was on the same page at the start of school in September. So that's what he's going to do tonight.
Since the community had made a statement in March that we need to continue with business as usual, I went ahead and started working with my staff and tried to figure out what's the best way to use the facility as we have it there. We also had a very significant conversation about no longer using the portables for instruction, so I went through a great deal of work to sort of figure out if this happens, what goes next. And I'm just going to use the term domino effect. Basically what occurred is we start off by saying we will no longer continue to use the portables for instruction. So we started off with portable number 1. Music is there, music comes into the building, which means portable number 1 is no longer going to be used for instruction. As a matter of fact, I'm in conversation with St. Anne's Church. They're using that facility to take it off site, and they're going to use it as a food pantry. I've met with some members of that parish and started working on that process. It's going to be at their expense to have it removed from our site. There will be some expense to the district to disconnect it from all of our stuff. We'll acquire a little bit more parking lot, a little bit more play area for our students. Then we went through the second conversation, which is Ventures needs to come back into the building. So we need to figure out where that's going to happen. So that means the portable number 2. Just to remind you, what I gave you, by the way, is a map of the current year and next year. Portable number 2 will continue to be used, but not for students. We already have a workshop in there, so our maintenance man can cut a board and do other work, store his tools and such. And then there's a smaller classroom where Ventures was previously located for a number of years, which we're going to move what people are familiar with as the BZ room, which is a copy room where we maintain our school supplies, pencils, paper, clipboards, such. So we're going to move all of that stuff out there. There is a little small slice of a room to the left that's been used for therapies over the years, which we've only used for storage. We're going to continue to use that for storage, and we're working around trying to set up a little meeting room so when teachers want to get together to work on some professional learning community, they could. So in other words, the only people that will be out there will be adults. Portable number 3, which is the one most parents are familiar with, is the one that sits next to the parking lot. You drive by every day. We haven't used that for instruction all year. We've only used it for storage, and a few times throughout the year we've used it for meetings. Next year we're going to completely shut it down for even meetings, turn the heat down to maximum or minimum, which is just above freezing, and it'll be a storage area. One side, that's where we keep extra furniture, such as I got a couple of classrooms worth of furniture which I don't want to dispose of, that we should keep, whether it's just to replace a chair for a classroom randomly, or if we need a full set of tables, desks for a classroom, it's stuff like that is stored. On the other side, we'll be using that for special education storage. You probably know that we purchase a lot of specialized equipment for special education, so that equipment will sit there because sometimes you buy a piece and you don't need to use it for a couple of years because a child outgrows it or there's not a child with that particular need. So in other words, we're going to hang on to those because for much needed storage. There's been a constant conversation in this community. We don't have adequate storage at Central School. This is the solution. Then if you move into the building, okay, how do you make this work so we can now begin to push things into the school building? One significant conversation was the only place in the entire building that is an appropriate instructional space for music is the stage. And we pulled it off the stage for a number of years because of egress means. So we're going to have to spend a few $1,000s to take the wall and cut it open, put in a second means of egress. I have consulted with and brought over members of the fire department, got the okay from them that we can put music back on the stage by spending a few $1,000s. It's less than ideal, but it's going to make it work. So as soon as we put music on the stage, we've now displaced quite a few things. Guidance and some therapies. So now I'm pushing into the building. Our dominoes are starting to push through. The second one, by taking Ventures and bringing it into the building, we are going to literally take Ventures and put it back in the backside of the library, which is, we're actually just barely at the minimum standards for the state on libraries. I could cite the RSA if you need to see it, but it's there. The size is being compromised. We're right at that edge. So we will put Ventures in the back of the library, and I've even got some really creative individuals with Mrs. Connors and Mrs. Weiscarver. They're trying to figure out a way to coexist, and we're literally going to use a collapsible wall that can move around on the days, because Mrs. Weiscarver, when she does Ventures, some days she's out and about in the classrooms doing what would be considered push-in, consult, doing God knows what else she comes up with, activities for students of various levels of our school. When she's in the library, you're going to see that wall expand, so you'll lose some space in the back of the library. We're coexisting, compromising space. The domino that fell there is we've been using that for special education learning center space this year. That needs to now go somewhere else. So then we started pushing around and looking at all of the available pieces in our school. That's the reason we have to take what is the BZ room, push everything out into a portable, because I need that for instructional space. There's where we're going to push in some of our therapies. That's where we're going to push in some of our learning center that was displaced from the stage and the library. We still haven't accommodated all of the pieces that are necessary for our school to be fully functional. We've had a lot of conversation about the district special education office that sits in the middle of our building. That's going to be relocated to the middle school. I don't know all the details of that one because I just know Maria and Tom and everybody else have got a plan. I've got enough things to worry about. That's something they're working on. I'm staying out of that one. But I will tell you that means Mrs. Gallagher, Mrs. Flynn, the secretarial crew that works with her, and they will be leaving the central school, and there's a place at the middle school that's going to be designed for an appropriate office place for them. So we're now dominoes are pushing around our district. There's going to be a great deal of expense to move all of that and set that up at the middle school. Now, we've now cleared out that space upstairs. Educationally, I'm going to create sort of a caring corner there, so our school psychologist will be there with our school counselor. We will also have our district behaviorist part-time officing there. We'll also have our school psych intern, that will be their home base to work. And then we're also going to be able to move into our 2 speech pathologists in that little office space. So in other words, I'm reassigning spaces within the building. I should say Karen Gallagher and I've worked a great deal to figure out how to accommodate special education services. There are a few other little minor pieces that are happening around the building. One of them is we had a long conversation with our technology people about do we need a full-sized classroom for our computer lab. We thought we could take advantage of one of those smaller classrooms in the oldest portion of Central School. So one of those very small classrooms will become the new computer lab. So we're just going to move all of our technology there, taking advantage of the fact that Dr. Dancy is doing a significant overhaul of some wiring and other systems at the building. So we're going to be moving the computer lab over to a room that's literally right across the hall from the library, which is nice. That means I can now use the computer lab for the new learning center, pushing it upstairs. It'll be right adjacent to our reading specialists and our Title I services because they tend to work a lot in conjunction with children as they move through our intervention processes. So that'll create some continuity of instruction and of the teaming there, which means I now have a room downstairs for 2nd grade. One of the tricky parts that I have here to deal with is I don't have enough full-size classrooms in the building. So there are 2 classrooms that are upstairs in our building in the oldest portion of the building. I'm limited to 18 students in those 2 rooms just because of the state rules. So I can only put 18 kids. I'm going to have a 4th grade this fall of probably around 80 or so children, which means I'm going to have 2 2nd grades with 18 kids and probably the other 2 2nd grades with maybe 21 or 22 kids. I just want you to be aware that I have to do that because of the constraints of space. So I just wanted the board to know that, you know, I'm not going to get into all the other little mucky details about this little closet. It's going to become a place for copy machines and stuff like that. There are other little sub layers that we are doing some moving around the building. But when I talked to my administrative team and Mrs. Yasenka, we said, this is the best that we can do given the circumstances we are. There's some expense that we're going to have to go here, but we're going to take care of your kids. That's the critical piece. Are there any questions?
You have 5 grade 1 classrooms this year, and you have 5 grade 1 classrooms next year. This year you have...
No, that's not true.
Not true?
No, we have 4 grade 1
Oh,
this year.
okay.
We'll have 5 next year.
All right, I'm
We're
looking at the grade 2
flip-flopping
one.
next year, okay?
Okay,
So
so this year there's 4 grade 1s, next year there's 5 grade 1s. You're projected at 92
Yes.
next year? What's the class size limit?
It'll be about 18, 19 children in first grade.
Is that the class, what
That's
is
a-
our school board policy?
That's a very good class size for first grade. 20
is.
is what we list as sort of the higher end number.
Yeah, because it,
But
yeah, I just did the
I
math.
feel very comfortable. 18, 19 is a very good solid
Okay,
number for a first grade room.
all right, and the 3rd graders that are going into 4th grade next year, they'll have 5 classrooms, because I know class crowds were a concern this year.
The third graders next year will be going from 4 groups that are right at 25. We'll spread them amongst 5 rooms.
All
This
right.
is the unusual cohort of kids that we started the year off thinking we're going to be okay with 21 kids. And everybody called my office that moved into town and said, I have a 3rd grader. And it was just like, it became an office joke that, I mean, we literally had a parent call me a month ago, we're moving into town. What grade's your kid in? 3rd grade, literally. So yeah, there's a lot of sweet 3rd graders that are relatively new to Hampstead.
All right.
Any other questions or comments? Jason?
Just a comment on this, on the plan, and the continued kind of move around. I'm not happy. I mean, this isn't
Nobody's
right.
happy with it.
Yeah, no, I know, and I think we're in agreement. But I want to call it out specifically. I'm frustrated by this, that yet again we are impacting ultimately educational quality as we move rooms around, as we now displace portion of the library. And listen, believe me, I'm appreciative of the work the administration is doing, and I'm especially appreciative of our teachers who have been very flexible and very understanding as we have done these kinds of things. I'm just frustrated because we have discussed this multiple times as this process has sort of evolved, that the consequence of us carrying out our strategic plan, number one, to get rid of the portables, and then number two, Article 2 that we've talked about multiple times, is that we're at the point, this is no longer theoretical, we are at the point where we're impacting educational quality as we continue to compress space in this building. We are out of space, and I don't know how many more times I can say it, again, and I think we all know, and I feel like I'm a broken record, but it's important to keep impressing this. Like, we're putting people in closets, we are repurposing, necessary and needed space everywhere we can find it just to get kids in this building because it's the right thing to do. It's frustrating that we have to keep doing this, and I just don't know how to make that more clear to people that, at a certain point, this is, we're not hiding. There's no buffer space anywhere. This isn't a case of that. Like we're out of space. We really are.
Yeah, and it's going to take its toll, because even if Article 2 passes this year, it's still another year of construction. So it's 2 years of living like this. And for anybody out there, because I know they're thinking it, well, you didn't have to bring the kids in. They could have stayed in the portables. Let me be clear. They could not stay in the portables. We have had expert advice from law enforcement, New Hampshire Homeland Security reports. They're telling us our kids are not as safe in portables as they are in the core building. So please, I don't want to hear anyone say, oh, well, you did it to yourselves because you took the kids out of the portables. We did it because it's safety first. If we can't keep our kids safe, and if that's not our number one priority, then nothing else we do really matters. So that's why the school is crowded. It's going to be crowded because Article 2 hasn't passed in this town. So until, till the switch is thrown and people get it, this is what we have for at least the next 2 years. So I really hope that, I don't know, it's after a while you can't even talk about it, but I just really hope that the people in this town will come around. As I said before, have a change of heart, change their mind, see that this is a need. This is something our kids deserve. This is something that the town has a responsibility to do, has a responsibility to provide a safe environment for our children, and one that's conducive to learning. It's for our children, it's for our staff, our administrators. It really just isn't fair to ask them to work under these conditions. So, thank you.
I have more questions if it's okay.
Sure.
All right, so guidance this year was placed on a cart because
Pardon me?
Guidance?
No, guidance has stayed on the stage this year.
it's on the stage, but
Yeah.
that's for like the lunch groups and that sort of thing. Like
You
there's
can
a
do
social
both.
emotional learning piece that she does in the classrooms, correct? And that's on a cart.
Yes, well, actually,
More or
that
less.
was, I would have done that no matter what spaces, because we're changing the model of our guidance program, so I don't want to bring that into this conversation.
Okay.
We are implementing a program called Second Step, in a program we're working more cohesively with our guidance and our classrooms. This is our work towards social emotional needs of students. It was actually a really good year for that program.
Okay.
She's crimped because she's far removed from the mainstream of where all the classrooms are. By putting her right in the middle of a lot of the grade level classrooms, that's a huge gain here.
All right, so that practice is going to continue where she's traveling to class
Yes.
to deliver that instruction. I do not see where the teach office is. I see this year the teach office, hang on a second.
I'm moving it next door to room number 121, and then number 122 where they are currently located. I'm moving it over because it gives them a better space, and we're going to have a different use of room 122 to support part of our special education program.
Okay.
I just didn't label teach office.
All right. No, I just didn't want to, you know,
Yep.
I wanted to make sure it wasn't an oversight.
Oh, trust me, they would let me know if they don't have an office.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for this difficult work. Thank you for all of the employees for understanding and working with us. And I am so sorry that we have to do this.
I think our staff are ready for it. I just am disappointed we're spending a lot of money on patchwork again.
Yeah.
There's a lot of patchwork in here, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Gary, talk to us about summer projects, please.
Sure. I feel like Mr. Collins stole a lot of my talking points. But I will start. You should have in your packet a spreadsheet and listing of the projects. So the first one on the list, we've budgeted about $85,000 for security improvements at the Hampstead Central School. That has changed from the last time we spoke because further improvements were needed to make this situation work for the next 2 years because Article 2 did not pass.
And to be clear, this $85,000 is being spent because Article 2 didn't pass.
That's correct, Madam Chair, yes. The second one related to that is the removal of the end of useful life portable classrooms. And I say end of useful life because the board made it clear that they do not have a useful life when it comes to educating our students. I carried a number of $18,000, which should be able to reclaim the site underneath the portables and also disconnect the utilities.
So that is another thing that is happening.
That's correct, Madam Chair. Next, you will see installing the door and the staircase, so we have the second means of egress, since we're using that as the basic space. And then you're going to find what I call the back of the house or backstage items that we typically do every summer, and that is preventive maintenance on the heating plant, fire alarm testing, which is dictated by code, septic grease trap preventive maintenance, and emergency lighting preventive maintenance. You'll see underneath this, there's a HCS grant revenue offset. That is the Homeland Security grant that we were awarded through the state. So about $48,000 will be coming back to the district for the security improvements.
Good.
Moving on to the middle school, you have security improvements there, which also has a grant revenue offset of about $68,000. And to go back to the failed school vote, we are moving the special education offices to the middle school. There's a classroom adjacent to the office where we'll be able to core a door in and make an office suite, so we have all the offices co-located right around the main office.
And that was for
I have that-
$62,000.
That's for $62,000, and I
Move
have...
them from here, there, to middle school, just to make room here in central school.
That's correct. So we have to construct private offices. Much of the topics of conversation are sensitive info. So you know, we want to treat acoustically and make private offices for the special education staff.
Got it.
I have that highlighted because the grant window did open back up for security grants. I applied right at the opening of business on Monday, yesterday, and applied to cover this because I consider this to be a security improvement due to the fact that it's the domino effect that Mr. Collins spoke to. Next, we're moving on to asbestos-containing materials removal at the middle school. It's year after year, we do a little bit. This gets us further down the line for removal of the asbestos materials, specifically the floor tile, and replacing it with new floor tile with no asbestos-containing materials.
How close are we to eliminating all the asbestos?
This gets us really close. I think if we complete this project, moving on to next year, I think we'll be in good shape to complete the removal of all the materials.
Okay. So we're about a year and a half out from total asbestos.
And I think we're in great shape compared to a lot of schools across the country that are dealing with this. I think Hempstead's made great strides in removing.
Okay.
And
that's good news.
Testament to good planning over the years. What was carried in the budget was $6,000 to replace the carpet in the main lobby or the main entrance at the middle school with a resilient flooring. And then again, we go down to the preventive maintenance, the back of the house items that are similar to the central school. And that's the heating plant, fire alarm testing, fire extinguisher testing, septic grease trap, generator, and emergency lighting.
Also, the server room, I don't know if you
Oh, I think
spoke about
I missed that one. So this coincides with Dr. Dancy's project over the summer. So to supply it with the right electricity, so we're tied to the generator. We're putting a sub panel in there, so if we do lose power, we don't have an interruption in service. Air conditioning to protect the new equipment that we're installing, and then also new flooring to better maintain the environment in the room.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions that may come up.
Any questions from the board? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Next, Dr. Dancy. Going to update us with additional information that we requested at our last meeting concerning change of location for our meetings.
What I have is video personnel, and I have spoken with the Cable Commission, and if we were to meet at the middle school under our normal, what we have already installed, they would continue to supply us personnel that would video the meetings at no additional cost to the district. They do pay their people $45 for a regular meeting, up to 3 hours. After that, it's $60 for a meeting. They would not be willing to supply someone if we had to set up the system and tear it down. We would have to do that on our own. And then I don't have figures for what that would cost us as personnel here, because I don't really know how we would even twice a month, other than $15.75 an hour is what I pay a technology assistant to do that type of work. I did get back with the mobile broadcasting quote here, and they said I budgeted low for that, the $24,130. It was actually low. They didn't give me a full price, but it would cost more than that to create a portable, high-quality video system there. So is there anything else that I mean, I don't know really much more I can tell you.
No, just to review, I don't have it. I think we had 4 options we were looking at. Oh, you have it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathleen. Well, 3 options. There's actually 4. One is to do nothing
Right.
and stay here.
Correct.
And actually, with that, I was thinking about, I just want to float this idea, if we actually don't have the money in the budget to do any of these options right now.
That is correct.
If we decide to stay here and budget for it next year, that might make more financial sense. And going down even the pathway even a little more, if Article 2 passed, it would be possible to have it set up at the central school and be part of the construction, to move it over there. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Sure. Build a boardroom in there.
As option, thank you, as option, the current option, you know, what we could do, and not do anything this year and wait and see what happens in March and move over there. The other option was roughly $12,000 to be in the Hsdsb Middle School cafeteria. Option 2 was library permanent installation at $38,000, and then the mobile broadcasting at $24,000. And my input was, I did speak to someone about the mobile, and they said unless you are very structured and you have a team set up, a dedicated team that's ready to move, it's not going to work.
Correct.
As much as I agree with Jason, that's nice to have, we don't have all the other components to make it work, I don't think.
The members of the Cable Commission agreed with that, and they do this all the time, and just to have that team is so necessary.
So we're here tonight to make a decision.
I have a quick question. You said with the middle school option that there was some of that work that you had been planning on doing anyhow?
Correct.
So if we take that out of the final tally of the 12,300 estimate, what would it be?
I do not have budgeted amount of projector for the presentations, the $5,000 for that, nor do I have budgeted for the wireless microphones. So it's $10,000 I will not be doing unless you direct me to do that out of some other funding source.
So it's minimum.
The ones that I was going to take care of was new speakers, the sound maintenance to optimize sound quality. Those are really the things that I'm going to do regardless, because we have to do that to continue with our yearly meetings that we have over there.
So I'll try for something here. I'll make the motion that we table this. That gives us the flexibility then to come back to this later on. I think the chair makes a good point. And I do think it would make sense if Article 2 passed to kind of roll it in that. There's no impetus for us to leave the town hall. The town's been very generous and has the facilities and so forth. So it's not like we have to do this. It was a desire because it made sense to us. But I'm okay with making that motion to table this, and then we can readdress this at a later date.
I'd second that.
Yeah, I mean, the
Discussion, one of the reasons we did it was for space. If we know in advance that we're going to have a meeting where we're going to need more space, like when we had all the drummers here, we would still have the capability to go over to middle school for a special meeting when we knew we were going to have a lot of people in attendance or a performance of some sort. So.
And it's not completely out of the ordinary that we're meeting at the town hall, since the reason why this building is here, as our second graders taught us in the community show, is because it was built as a school. So, yeah.
Okay, there's a motion on the table to table. All in favor? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank
And
you for all of that
Dr.
work.
Dancy, for all the research that you did, looking into that possibility for us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, just keep it on file, and if we, get back into this in the future, we'll have that.
Next, we have to set our school board goals for 2018, 2019. The way it looks now, we don't have to meet. We don't have to have another meeting in June. So what I would like to suggest to the board is that we use that meeting in June to say, Jim, to use that for our workshop, for our goals. Meet in the library as we did last year. Only this time do it now rather than waiting till August. We don't need to have a regular meeting in June, so why not use that time for the workshop? Kathleen has already told me that she cannot make that evening, but suggested that we move forward anyway, and that she will leave us with her list of goals to discuss.
I'll give you my thoughts.
I'm fine with that.
Any feelings on that?
And I can't attend that meeting, but I think Dr. Metzler might be available.
Yes, that's what you said.
Okay.
Yep.
Would Melissa be available to take notes?
She doesn't have to. As you remember at our workshop last time, Dr. Wilson actually took the notes.
Yeah, but if Dr. Wilson isn't going to be there, so.
Well, then Dr. Metzler will have to take those.
All right.
Goes back to Kathleen's question, are you available? Kathy Belcher might be available too if she's not.
We'll figure it out. Somebody will.
Somebody can take notes. I mean,
Yeah.
I can take notes if that becomes an issue. It's okay.
Okay.
All right, so we don't need a vote or anything on that. We'll just move that to the 26th.
We will have to post it. And so where do you want it? At the library?
Middle school library, if it's available, yes.
The 26th?
June 26th.
It's a possibility.
Sure, that's fine. As long as it's not being used that way, it frees up the library too in case someone else wanted a larger space. It's hot, okay. Thank you. All right. Policies. 5 policies are up for second read and adoption. There were no new ones? Just the second?
Just this one. There wasn't another policy meeting.
Pardon me?
There was not another policy meeting.
Okay. So this is second read. We've already gone over these. Their policy DKA, payroll procedures, JLF, child abuse and neglect, GCG, part-time and substitute professional staff teachers, GCC, professional staff leaves of absence, and JICA, dress code.
I move that the board accept on second read and adopt the 5 policies that the chair just listed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, review, questions? None? Seeing none? All in favor of adopting? The motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next policy meeting we will have in September.
Great. The next, board comments and correspondence. Anybody?
You can start.
I can't remember where I went. I went,
Pinkerton?
Pinkerton?
Went to the Pinkerton Sending Dinner. That was very informative to hear what's going on over there and what they're planning for the future, and including their search for a headmaster. They had students there actually that spoke and gave their opinions on what they would like to see in a headmaster. One that was interesting that we all commented on was that one student said, For a school that size, they think they should have dual headmasters. 2. And kind of split up the duties. So that was a good evening. I went to the, I think that was at the last meeting, 2nd grade community thing. Met with Mr. Collins.
Red Nose Day.
Red Nose Day, yeah. A lot of school things.
Yep.
Any other comments?
I had the pleasure of chaperoning the 6th grade field trip to Boston for the Freedom
nice.
Trail. The students were great. It was a great day. It was a beautiful day. This was last Friday, so it was great. I had a good time. So.
Nope.
The Central School Field Day was fantastic.
Oh, that's right.
I had a great time. Saw some of you guys there. How can you forget that?
It was last week.
I joined in tug of war.
It was a pirate theme. Kids loved it.
Yeah.
The weather was perfect.
Yeah, that was at the same time as the field trip. So.
It was the best day for field day that we've had in a long time. We didn't have to watch the weather for 3 days ahead of time. Okay. The other thing is we do have a piece of correspondence that was sent to all 5 board members. Therefore, it's correspondence that should be just brought up at the board level. It was from Mr. Steve Morse, dated June 2nd, 2018, to all 5 board members. Good morning. I'm writing to the board to get some clarification as to what will happen to our district if Timberlane successfully withdraws from SAU 55. Do you have a plan in place if this happens? If so, can I get some details on it? Thanks, Steve Morse. As chair, we have not received any notification or formal notification that there's going to be a change in the reorganization of the SAU at all. And I think my response would be that if and when that time would come, we would follow the procedures as set out in RSA, Section 194C2, organization, reorganization, or withdrawal. But the board really doesn't have time to play what happens if. So we're going to move on. As you can, everybody can see, we have a lot on our plate with moving kids into the building and moving forward. And so the short answer is, when we become aware of something, we'll address it according to the RSA. Okay?
And that's pretty consistent with what I said as chairman of the SAU at our last SAU meeting. So.
Yeah, it's not worth time, energy, or resources at this point.
Well, there's nothing we can do.
There's nothing.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, that was that. We're moving on to the consent agenda, please, Dr. Wilson.
Yes, and I am very pleased tonight to introduce our candidate who has been offered the position, and hopefully through your approval tonight, we'll get a chance to be our next assistant principal at Central School. And I want to invite Tara Lynn Cheney to the podium, just in case you have any questions at all. She's actually here with her husband. And I just want to read something that I think is indicative of her candidacy. And through this process, we had the first round, we went through, again, about 14, 15 applications in interviews. And then from the 15, we went to 8. And then from the 8, we sent 2 to the school board chair, and Dr. Metzler, we sent 3. And Tara Lynn her candidacy was superb. So I just want to read, her qualifications include 8 years of classroom teaching at the elementary level, 7 years as a literacy specialist and instructional coach, and 1 year as a curriculum specialist. She holds a bachelor's in science and a master's in elementary and literacy education. She also earned a current national board certification in early middle childhood reading language arts. And if you don't know, very rarely do you see nationally certified candidates. So we were very excited to see the National Board certification. She's in graduate school currently, pursuing her doctorate degree in educational leadership. She has worked in a variety of schools with a variety of students and teacher populations, and she is with us today, and we're hoping that you can talk a little bit more about what you're currently doing and what brings you here to Hampstead.
Sure. So as Dr. Wilson mentioned, I've been in public education for the last over a decade. Started out as a classroom teacher up in northern Maine, had the chance to move back down where I'm from, and continued my work. My passion is really literacy. I have my master's degree in literacy, and now I'm back in school pursuing my doctorate in ed leadership. I'm all but dissertation right now, and I'm hoping to have that in by the end of August, so before school starts, to have that wrapped up. This year I did accept a position as the curriculum specialist for a school, the main school for the deaf and hard of hearing. So that's been a really interesting challenge for me and a nice move into administration. But I missed being in a school building and building relationships with kids and really getting to know students the way I did when I was in literacy. So that brought me down here to Hampstead, the right size district. It was a nice feel when I came down, and so here I am before you this evening.
Any questions?
I'd just like to say that Dr. Metzler and I met you. We were both very impressed with your credentials and also with your responses to the questions that we asked. Very detailed questions in certain areas. So we're very happy to have you. And so the board knows, both Dr. Metzler and I agreed 100% on this candidate for the same reasons. So I think that speaks volumes because we don't always agree. So I think that the board can feel comfortable approving this nomination without reservation.
Thank you.
I just had a brief comment. This is Jeannie. Earlier in the meeting, we were obviously talking about the Central School, so I hope we didn't scare you or anything. The board is very passionate about making sure that we have a safe and educationally adequate facility for our kids here, and so we've been fighting as best that we can to try to get the facilities that we believe are necessary for the town. So tonight, we're a little frustrated at just in general about how things are going, but overall, this is a great community. It's a great school. We have fantastic educators, wonderful families. The students are excellent. You heard we have a large number in a very large high school. We have a large number of the top academic performers there, and then we also have a very highly engaged parents and even grandparents in the community. So it's very common to see parents and grandparents in the classrooms or in the schools being heavily engaged, which I imagine was you either already know or someone's kind of told you about that. So.
And yes. Sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes maybe not so much, right?
I'm looking forward to working with such an engaged board and community. So thank you.
Yeah, we thought you would be a very good fit.
I think the other thing is we were going through this process, and what we appreciated was her expertise in literacy, especially at that elementary grade, because she knows what good teaching and good instruction is at that level. That doesn't need to be taught. She comes and brings that with her. The administrative piece, she's going to be learning some of that through Mr. Collins and the mentorship that she'll be receiving for some of that. But her ed leadership doctorate, I think, has opened her eyes wide in terms of what's needed to be a good leader today. So we're very pleased that she's here. And if you have any chance in the next week or so to come down and visit, yes. We'd love you to take a day off from where you are now. Don't tell them. Come down here and just meet some of the staff and the students before they go for summer break.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah. So we're working on, we're also working on her
reciprocal certification from Maine to New Hampshire. We're one step closer. She's got a statement of eligibility right now, which is great because that allows us to be able to put together a plan, and most of her coursework is going to be used in her plan anyway. So the State Department has been very helpful in looking at her certifications and coursework to get us on that next step.
Thank you. We look
Thank you
forward
very
to
much.
Thank
you
you.
being with us next year.
Yeah,
Thank
welcome
you.
to the district.
Thank you.
You want to do all of them together?
Do her separate.
Okay, fine.
What?
I'll make the motion, because it's an administrator as opposed to the full packet together. I'll make the motion that the board accept the nomination of Terilyn Cheney, is it? Am I saying that right? Yes. Terilyn Cheney as Hampstead Central School Assistant Principal.
I'll second. Thanks, Jim. Where's Jim? We both seconded at the same time.
Who wants to take it?
Let Jim do it.
All in favor?
Again, welcome.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
As well, you know, we're doing some other hiring as well, but the candidates aren't here. But through your packet, you'll see some information about Susan Clark. She is being nominated as the special ed teacher at Central School, and she has some certification, both elementary and special ed, that is required for the position, so it's great. She's got some master's degree as well as the bachelor's in elementary ed. She's had some experience working in other schools in New Hampshire, most recently in Salem, and when she saw that this position opened up, she immediately wanted to apply. So we were very happy that she did. So as you can see, she's got a number of years of experience, which will help us in where we need to go with the special ed program at the elementary school. I'll move along to the next candidate, which is Rachel Prue. Rachel Prue I actually interviewed her this morning, and she's very excited to come on board. She is a teacher who has had 7 years experience, 3 in Connecticut. She had a couple of years at Atkinson Academy, and then due to a reduction in force, was moved over to Danville, and again another reduction in force, and so she went over to Salem last year. But she wants to come back to the SAU, and we were very pleased, and I know Mr. Collins, when speaking with her, was very excited about the energy and the ideas that she had in coming forward with her 7 years experience. And this will be the grade 3 position. Then the last position that we've been interviewing for is Allison Shimoni, and Allison is certified in general special ed. She will be the middle school special ed teacher and has a master's degree in special ed. She has had a great experience through her degree, but this will be her, I believe, her first year working with us in a public school setting. She did work with Birch Tree Center as a clinical instructor, which is a private facility working with students with significant special needs. So we're pleased to have her come on board as well. And those were the 3 candidates for our professional positions. And then if you want, the last one is we've had a request for a 1-year leave of absence. One of our ELA teachers from the middle school, Jessica Maroney, is asking for a leave of absence for child rearing purposes.
So this is in accordance with our newly second read adopted policy GCC?
I believe, yes, well, it was with the policies that were taking place up to this point, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've done this before.
So I'll make the motion, the board accept the nominations and approve the leave of absence.
Second.
Any further discussion? Ready to vote? All in favor? Motion
Thank you.
carries unanimously. Thank you.
We've been very fortunate on the candidates and the qualifications that have come through. So a couple more hires and we should be done. My report, again, I went to the sending school district as well. Very interesting to hear the students' perspective on what they were looking for a headmaster. Mostly visibility and hanging out with them. So that's what they were interested in making sure happened. Last night, graduation, 716 graduates, I heard. I wasn't able to make it last night, but we applaud all the Hempstead graduates and wish them well. And I just want to bring to your attention the special education compliance letters that were in your packet. Again, these are indicators that we have to be responsible for from the Department of Ed. And under Karen Gallagher's leadership, once again, we're 100% compliant with timeliness with initial evaluations, and we're 100% compliant with the early transition from early supports. So getting kids from when they're almost 3 with early supports, and they come into us in special education at 3. And the way that we have been able to transition those students has met the bar. So again, very pleased with the 100% compliance. We are selected, once again, to do NAEP, National Assessment of Educational Progress. It's a national test. We do it usually every year in January. And it will be the 4th graders and the 8th graders taking several different tests. The assistant principal hiring process for the middle school. Again, we went through the process very similar to what we did tonight with Terilyn. When we had a candidate come through all 3 rounds, made an offer, and it was declined, unfortunately. So now we've opened it up again. And Mrs. Denola is going to head the first round of the interviews during hopefully the last week of June. The top 3 candidates will come to the SAU for secondary interviews, and a decision will be made on those interviews. We'd like to have a board member at the second round SAU interviews, much the same as what Karen did when we did the previous rounds. We'll ask the board to allow us to hire the assistant principal on the summer hire list based on the school board's participation. If it's not preferred, we will have to conduct a special meeting, and scheduling it could be problematic due to vacation schedules in July. We're going to be running up against everybody's availability and even the candidates if we get them through. And I don't want to lose candidates, so I would like the ability to hire through the summer hiring process. So that's what I have for the hiring process. And the last thing I'm just going to leave you with is there's a lot of end-of-year activities happening, and the schools have already referred to those. They've been advertising all of those events. Graduation, again, for 8th grade is June 19th. We wish the families all a great summer vacation. We strongly encourage students to keep reading over the summer, since learning never stops. We also remind the community that students may be walking or riding their bikes around the community roads during that summer fun. So exercise safety and caution when driving. We want all our kids to stay safe this summer.
Can I ask you to go back a minute on the national testing that you referenced?
NAEP, yes.
That's not in any of these, right?
It was on the correspondence.
It's in here.
Oh, it's in correspondence? All right.
Yeah.
So being selected, can we decline?
No.
No? And it's 4th graders next year and 8th graders? And
yes.
Our 12th graders as well, or no? Because we don't have in Hempstead District. I mean, they're in Pinkerton.
12th graders at Pinkerton, but Pinkerton won't be selected because they're not considered a public school, according to the U.S. Department of Ed.
Right. All right.
So, and this is something we've done right along every year.
used to be somewhat voluntary, and they couldn't get anybody, so the Department of Ed has made it more mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Interesting.
in January.
I think they just passed a law stating that parents can opt out of tests.
Well,
So- but that's a state law. This is a national test.
Is on
that
the
it?
second page of that letter. Parental notification and opt-out.
All right.
It's in
Oh,
there.
okay. Well, that's a voluntary
We'll continue to
survey.
follow the law and the regulations as well.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see any individual assessment reports from this test. All it is it's statewide, state-level assessments to see where kids are nationally in comparison. And of course, New Hampshire students do very well.
Yeah.
In comparison to other states.
I wonder, though, I just wonder if they would let us opt out of this one.
I think we've tried it in the past.
Let's try again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I
No.
just make one comment?
Yep.
Regarding this, regarding the AP position at the middle school. And I know nothing's going to get settled tonight because obviously Dr. Wilson just talked about kind of the reopening and the process and so forth. I don't want us to like force a candidate. Do you know what I mean? Like my concern is, okay, so it didn't work out. You know, we had the offer out there, it didn't work out. Fine. I don't want to put us in a position where we grab someone just because we think school's about to start and we've got to pick someone that's not someone that we otherwise would have. That may be moot. Maybe we find a really great candidate and we can all agree and we're all happy and it works out. I would like for us, though, to be willing to consider, if we can't, if there isn't a right candidate, an interim. So that we're not forcing ourselves just to take someone. Do you know what I mean? And again, this could be totally moot. Maybe we have some great candidates and everything works out, but I just don't want to put us in a position where we feel our backs against the wall and we just have to take a warm body.
No, I hear what you're saying, and I think, I don't think that would happen. I mean, I don't think that the superintendent or the board would take someone just to have a warm body here.
Yeah, I would hope that,
No.
yeah.
But I think just having this discussion, we kind of make our intent clear.
I think if we get to that point, we will have to have a board meeting to say, you know, it's not working out the way we want, therefore we have to have another solution. And I want to take one step at a time to see where we're at. I mean, we've opened it for 2 weeks, so we're waiting to see, you know, applications.
Okay.
Other to accept
business?
the consent agenda?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Thank you very much.
Unanimous. Thank you. Other business or old business to come before the board? I'm not aware of any, and I am not aware of a non-public being needed tonight, is there?
We have some people waiting for us.
Oh, I didn't know you made those arrangements. You did?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't know if that was going to happen or not.
Yep.
All right. So we are having a non-public under 91A 32.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Good night, Sophie.
Have a good night. Congratulations again.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you so much.
That's a motion for non-public under RSA 91A:3, paragraph 2, part I.
I'll second.
Mrs. Abbruzzese?
Yes.
Mr. Cipriano?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mrs. Yasenka?
Yes.
Thank you.